What now? It's the question that I imagine is on the mind of the disciples as they've witnessed what took place, not on a Good Friday for them. Jesus hanging on the cross, he's dead. The person that they've placed all of their hopes and expectations and their dreams on for the last 3 years is buried in a grave. And it's probably the same feeling that many of you have felt when you're going through a difficult season in life where you feel alone, you've lost a loved one, your relationships, your marriage, friendships, they're ending, they're broken, you see how fragile they are. It's the situation where you get a diagnosis that you weren't expecting, and you have a family member that's calling you from the hospital. They are in their last moments. It's the sensation you get when you've prayed out to God and there doesn't seem to be any answer. Nobody's coming. There's no help on its way. It's that sensation, I think, that the disciples find themselves in here. As the sun sets on Friday night and they've witnessed Jesus being crucified and now buried, they have to go home, and somehow they have to continue. Somehow life has to just keep moving on. And as much as they would want to hold time still and just repeat, rewind, go back, do things all over again, there's no way back. There's no way to undo what's already been done. And so what now? What now? I can imagine it's probably one of these nights where you go to bed sleeping, your pillow stained with the tears from your eyes, the questions, the uncertainty circling around your mind. It's what you've felt when you've had to lay to rest a loved one that passed away unexpectedly. It's the feeling you get when you've signed the divorce papers because your marriage is over. It's the sensation, it's that feeling of being rejected, a long-term relationship ending, work that you placed your hopes in doesn't call back, doesn't give you another opportunity. You're fired, you're let go. You've all been there. In one way or another, you've been there. And if you haven't, the unfortunate thing is that we all, at some point, go through an experience like that. And so here the disciples are. It's probably very quiet. As they gather again, as they would have done, maybe they stay up all night. Maybe no one has anything to say. Maybe everyone is just shocked, because that would have been a shocking thing to have seen Jesus hanging there on the cross, cry, "My Father, why have you forsaken me?" To see the tears, to see the anguish, those are all shocking images. And so here the disciples are processing, what happened? How do we even explain this? You guys have been there. I can imagine the sun coming up on the disciples. They probably stayed up all night, and it's Sabbath now. And Jesus is still in the tomb. What do we do? It's impossible to go to church. You have this heaviness on your heart. How can we show up to synagogue? Life can't just continue on, but for some other people it did. The Roman soldiers are there watching. The religious leaders are doing their church activities, and the disciples are just left. They're just left to wonder, what now? What do I do now? If we rewind the clock and we look at Jesus' activities this week, we have been thinking about. And if you haven't, well, here you go. This week has been called Holy Week. And it is a meditation, a journey through Jesus' last week leading up to his crucifixion on the cross. I love how it starts with Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is the celebration. Palm Sunday is when everyone is still friends with you, when everything seems to be going well. As Jesus is riding into town on a donkey, everyone's waving palms. They're welcoming him like the Messiah, the avenger, the deliverer that they want him to be. And so everyone's celebrating, "Save us now, Hosanna, here he is." The soldier that we've been waiting for, our deliverer, our Messiah. They want him to take Rome down their way. They want Jesus to save them, but he's going to do it in the way that they least expect it. But these same people that here are celebrating Jesus one day, by the end of the week, are the same ones that are shouting, "Crucify him! We'd rather have Barabbas! Crucify him!" No matter, Jesus continues on. On Monday, Jesus is in the temple, and we see Jesus doing something that seems out of character, but it's actually not. Jesus goes into the sacred place of prayer, and there he sees people taking advantage of the poor, of the vulnerable, exploiting them financially, and he upends that system. There is an anger that rises up in him, and he grabs the whip, as you see in the picture, and he starts driving them all out. "This is my house of prayer, and you've turned it into a cave of a den of wolves." And Jesus continues on during that week. As he's walking with his disciples, he notices this fig tree. And it looks beautiful, it looks luscious, it looks great. But as his disciples get closer, they notice it doesn't have any figs. It's a tree that's beautiful on the outside. Its appearance looks good, but it's not producing anything. It's not living its purpose. It just looks nice. But there's nothing there. Jesus curses the tree and, well, it dies. By Wednesday, Judas has given up on this Jesus. He wanted a Jesus that might benefit him. He wanted a Jesus that might help his bank account get larger. He wanted a Jesus that would do things his way. And so Judas, realizing, man, you know what, this guy's not going to do this. There's this woman anointing his feet with expensive money. We could have done other things with that, and he's just done with this Jesus. So he turns him in. For some coin, I'll give you Jesus. And later that week, you're going to see Judas doing that very thing. As the night ends on Thursday, Jesus is gathered with his disciples. He's done a lot of extraordinary things that are out of the norm. Jesus now washes his disciples' feet. He does the work that the slave is supposed to do. But nobody else is doing it. Everyone else is looking around at each other awkwardly. Like Peter's probably like, that's on you, John. You're the youngest. I'm senior disciple here. I'm one of the first. And so Jesus gets up. He grabs the towel, he grabs the water, and he starts washing his disciples' feet. Peter's, no. What are you doing? Well, you weren't going to do it. So let me wash your feet. At that same table, Judas is sitting there watching Jesus because he's got this plan already. He knows what he's about to do. And so does Jesus. And I love that Jesus doesn't outcast him. I love that even in that moment, Jesus shows mercy and compassion to him. He welcomes him, his traitor, at his table. The person who's about to betray him shares a meal with Jesus too. But then he gives him that final opportunity. Well, if you're going to do what you're going to do, go and do it quickly. And Judas gets out. Later that night, Judas will lead some soldiers to Jesus. It's not like Jesus was hiding anywhere. And he turns him in with a kiss. How painful it is to be betrayed in such a loving way. To have a friend, someone you appreciate, someone you've invested time in, stab you in the back with a sign of affection. It has got to be one of the most gut-wrenching experiences. To know that the person who you trusted, the person who you sat with, the person who you did life with, you ate with, you ministered together, is plunging a sword onto your back, and he's doing it with a kiss. Jesus is arrested. He's taken to trial. He's taken from one person to the next. Everyone knows he's innocent, but nobody wants to do anything about it. Everyone's trying to avoid a political situation from rising up there. And so Jesus says, yes, I am. I am who you say I am. I am the king. I'm the king of the Jews. And with that, even Pilate gives him one last opportunity. Says, no, I'll bring out Barabbas and we'll let the people decide. I can't do this. We'll let the people decide. And the people say, crucify him, crucify him. And on that Friday night, then Jesus is there on the cross with some other two rebels. He stands there in between them. And today, I want us to reflect for just a brief moment on one of the phrases that Jesus uses as he's hanging there on the cross. I want you to see Jesus and recognize that as he's being tortured, as he's in pain, Jesus' mind doesn't drift to vengeance, to getting back, to cursing. Jesus is this perfectly emotionally regulated individual, so grounded in his identity as the Son of God, that as he's being hurt, as he's being betrayed, as all of these things are happening, he thinks about forgiveness. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. If I was on the cross, I might have said some different things, but Jesus is not Jesus. Forgive them. He looks over to his dear mother, the person who had raised him, the person who had taught him. He looks out for her, and he tells his beloved disciple, here is your mother. Mother, here is your son. And he looks after her from then on. Notice the things that are on Jesus' mind there in the end. But before you see Jesus as this superhero of emotion, I want you to notice what Jesus says a few moments after. Because Jesus, as he's lifting up his gaze to the heavens, to the skies, the clouds are hovering over, the dark is in mourning. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Where are you? I feel like I'm in this alone. Why have you abandoned me? It's the honest cry of every human being that's found himself in that situation where you're dealing with a loss, where you're dealing with an end, and you don't know what to do. You don't know what's going on. Why? Where did you go, God? This experience takes place here in today, this Silent Sabbath. Silent Sabbath is the day in between. As Adventists, something funny happens with Silent Sabbath. We show up to church and we like to, it's almost unavoidable. We want to talk about resurrection already. But there's a day in between. Before we can do the Easter resurrection celebration, there's a day here in between that we can't ignore. There is a moment in time, there's something taking place here and now in this day that sometimes we want to skip over. That in our humanity, we'd like to go from, why doesn't Jesus die and the next day come back to life? You know, why does he have to linger? Why does he leave his disciples in that moment of turmoil, despair, and uncertainty? Because Saturday has to have been the most awkward day for the disciples. Saturday is the day where nobody can even look at each other because no one knows what to say, no one knows what to do. It's the awkwardness you might feel when you're looking at someone who's grieving, who just lost a family member, who lost a loved one, who's going through a difficult, painful situation, and you're looking at them. And everything inside of you wants to ease their pain. Everything inside you wants to say, it's going to be okay, but you don't know that. You want to ease that suffering, that grief, and you see the tears, and sometimes, those of us who might be more awkward around the tears, we say, don't cry, but why not? What if that is the most appropriate thing to do? What if that is the most honest, the most human, the most spiritual, the most faithful thing to do in that situation? Silent Sabbath is the awkward day where you've prayed, you've fasted, you've rallied a group of your friends, you've called the church, you've called the elders, and you've asked everyone, pray for my marriage, pray for my job, pray for my work, pray for the situation that's going on, and no answer comes. Things are still as painful, as difficult, as awkward as they were when you prayed, and you don't know what to do. I've done everything. I've prayed, I've fasted, I've read my Bible, I've confessed my sins. Where are you, God? Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you answering? We all want to go from that painful experience. We want to go to Resurrection Sunday right away, but there's something happening here that needs to happen in us. God doesn't just leave us there. God doesn't just do that for fun. He's not some kind of masochist who enjoys seeing his people suffer. But there's a reason why that's taking place. It's a day that's unavoidable. We can't skip it. So this morning, I won't spend a ton of time on the resurrection because I want to honor this day for what it is. A day where Jesus is in the grave, hope seems lost, confusion, despair abounds, and we don't know where to go from here. So what do we do on Silent Sabbath? What are we supposed to do? What do we do with days and with seasons in our life? Because sometimes it's not one day. Sometimes it feels like months, years, seasons of our life where we find ourselves in that darkness and in that despair. There's no answer coming. What do I do there? Well, I'd like to suggest that what we can do is to spend some time embracing the silence. This picture that I have up here is known as the quietest place on earth. In 2004, 2012, and 2021, it got the World Guinness record for the quietest place on earth. You can find this place in Minnesota. You might be able to book an appointment at it. People have gone here to do research on the experiences of what it's like to be in the quietest place on earth. In this chamber, the mechanisms, everything around you is designed to absorb sound. And so they've been able to design this room in such a way that it absorbs 99.99% of all sound, of decibels. It's interesting because I'm going to read to you something that somebody wrote about this place when they went to go visit it. They said that in this chamber, all external sound is absorbed. It creates an extreme silence. In this environment, this journalist says, you begin to hear internal body sounds, like your heartbeat, your breathing, the blood gushing through your veins inside your own head. In this chamber, she noticed that she was heightened, like she had a heightened awareness of her bodily sensations, a distorted sense of time. Her thoughts began to race, and she began to experience some mild visual and sensory hallucinations. And the reason is because you've been deprived of all your other senses. The brain starts to generate its own stimuli due to the lack of external input. Most people last only about 45 minutes in this place because they start going crazy. Imagine sitting in that kind of room, in that quiet place. Some of you are like, man, I wish I could go sit there for just a little bit. But in that silence, you begin to lose this sense of being able to stand. So you have to sit, because a lot of the way that we navigate the world is through sounds, and we find our balance in this way, and we can orient ourselves around. But in this room, you have to sit down or you have to lay down. Imagine hearing all of these things that you normally don't hear. It's got to be a really awkward experience. It's just surreal. But I like to compare this situation to precisely what I believe that God sometimes allows. I think that God sometimes allows us seasons where we enter into these chambers of silence, precisely so that we can hear things that we normally don't. Because very few of us think of or have ever heard the gushing of blood coursing through our veins. And that might make you feel a little queasy, like, that's awkward. Maybe there's a reason why we don't hear that all the time. Maybe there's a reason why we're not always so aware of our breathing, because maybe you start freaking out because now you're like, oh man, I just breathe automatically. You breathe automatically. You don't have to tell your body to do that. But here in this chamber, you begin to hear these things that you normally don't. And sometimes there are seasons in our life where I believe that God allows these moments of deep silence, and reflection. What we like to do with these moments, though, is drown out everything that is coming up to the surface. Silence is uncomfortable. You're sitting with someone that's weeping, and you just want to, hey, everything's going to be okay. Don't do it. The silence, the awkwardness, we almost don't know how to deal with it, how to process it. And so I believe that sometimes God gives us these moments, these seasons, to hear precisely what we normally couldn't. But once you've sat with the silence, some things begin to rise to the surface. You become aware of some things that you had ignored, maybe that you hadn't even realized were there. And this is where I'd like to take us, because Jesus quotes Psalm 22 for a very specific reason. It's not just something, he's not just saying words, he's not just throwing them up in the sky. There's a reason why Psalm 22 is the psalm, is the hymn, is the anthem that's on his lips as he's hanging there on the cross. I want to share just the introduction of Psalm 22 and encourage you to read the rest of it when you get home. This is how it starts. You'll notice this is exactly what Jesus says. He says, my God, my God. It's that kind of expression that it's not just, you can sense the agony there. You can sense the depth there. It's not just my God. It's my God, why have you forsaken me? It's the kind of thing that if anyone at church might say, or someone shares with you in confidence, man, I feel like God has abandoned me. You might, hey, we probably should pray for you. We might need to gather the church elders and rally around you, because that's probably not a very good thing, but it's the thing that was on Jesus' lips. It's the prayer that he was praying. It's a very honest, genuine prayer, and it's real. It's human. Why have you forsaken me? Why, he continued to say, why are you so far from saving me? So far from my cries of anguish. He feels this distance. He feels this separation. He feels like God has abandoned him. He feels like his situation is so dark that God must have just given up on him. You're on your own now. God, why does it feel like this? And notice this isn't just coming from any random person. Some other person you might hear say these words and, man, you haven't been reading your Bible enough then. You should probably be praying more. You should probably be fasting. This is not just some ordinary person that's saying this. This is Jesus, the Son of God. And he's giving expression to everything that he's feeling here inside. My God, I cry out by day, and there's no answer. By night, and I find no rest. I don't know if you've ever found yourself in a situation like this, where the outlook on your life is so bleak, so dark, that you don't see anything good that could possibly come out of this. You don't see until tomorrow. You are so deep in that situation that there's no hope for you. If anyone this morning finds themselves in this situation, you've found yourself praying out to God, crying out to him, I want to encourage you to sit with the silence. Embrace the tension, because God is doing an important work in that moment, in that season. I know we want to rush. Pastor, just get us to Sunday already. Can we talk about the resurrection? Can we just celebrate that Jesus is risen and he's back and he's mighty and he's powerful and he defeated death? Let's get there. Yeah. We will. But this is necessary too. And so there are a few things that I want to just nuggets of wisdom that I'd like to share with you this morning on this brief reflection of Psalm 22. Read the rest later when you get home. I hope it blesses you. Silent Sabbath reminds us that God's silence does not equal God's absence. That the fact that you can't hear from God does not mean, as maybe we've been taught in church, that God has left you. That you're so bad a sinner that God isn't hearing your prayers anymore. God is just a bad. No. I think like a good friend, like a really good friend, like a good active listening friend, not the kind of friend that you're sharing your thing and then they cut you off, or they're distracted on their phone and you're trying to open up to them and they're doing something else. Their mind is, no. He's just there. And he doesn't feel the need to interject, to rush you from the thing that you're feeling onto the next thing. God's silence doesn't mean that God isn't there. I think he's very present, attentive to what's going on, to what you're feeling, to what you're processing. He's listening well. And so if you ever find yourself in a dark season where you can't hear from God, you've prayed, you've fasted, you've done everything, and there's no answer that's on its way. Your marriage is still broken. Your family situation is falling apart. The finances, your health, family, work, relation, whatever it might be. That just because you can't hear from God, just because there's no immediate response, it doesn't mean that God isn't doing something there. Listening. God is listening. The second thing that Silent Sabbath reminds us is that God does not rush us from pain to glory for a reason. We want that. Can we just skip over this part? Can we just, we want the control on Netflix to be, I don't, that part's too sad. I want to just skip that part of my life. I want to get to the next thing. God doesn't rush. He's never in a hurry. We just sang this morning, on time, God. He's going to be on time. It's not going to be mine. It's very unlikely that it's going to be yours, but he's going to be on time. And there's a reason then why he's taking us from this painful experience and slowly guiding us to the next situation, to the next season. There's a reason. I remember when I was in high school, I'm very intentional when I say this because my wife is here. I was a hopeless romantic. I loved with such a passion. I fell in love at first sight. And there was this one girl in high school. My wife would say there was a lot. There were many. There wasn't just one. There was a ton. You fell in love with anyone you saw on the street. Yeah. And I imagined a whole life with them in scenario, and I never even said hi to them. But in my head, we were married. It was amazing. And there was this one girl who I was just, man, if anyone get like their Facebook memories? Oh man, there's a whole generation here who's like, Facebook, bro. Facebook. But I get Facebook memories for a very specific reason, because they are the most cringe thing that I ever see. The pictures of myself, the things I was posting. What was I doing? But there was this girl, and I was head over heels. I would walk her home because I grew up in this small town outside of Bakersfield, and we'd walk home from high school. I'd drop her off at her door, like out of the way from my house. Like I live over here, and I would walk her over there just to, spend some time with her. And I remember one day, like, I'm going to build up the courage to ask this girl out. I'm going to do it. I have to. Otherwise, she's never going to know. And so I finally did it in the most awkward way that you can imagine. Just think of me as awkward as I currently am, even more awkward then. And I don't even know how I said it. I don't know what the proper terminology. Do you want to go out with me? Do you want to be my girlfriend? I don't know. But I said it. And the look on her face was the first answer, was the first, bucket of cold water over this reality that I was creating. And I was like, uh-oh. And then came the words, I don't really see you that way. You're a good friend. You're a nice guy. Everyone just was a dagger into my heart. And I got home, actually ran home. I remember it was a warm, sunny day in Shafter, and I ran home. And I already had tears in my eyes. Remember, I'm a hopeless romantic. So this was the person that I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. And she just said no. And I'm a hopeless romantic. So I got home and I put on this old Mexican singer, Chalino, I think his name was, and I put on the saddest song that you could imagine. And I just gave in to the sadness that I was carrying in my heart. And I was like, I will never love again. I will never meet somebody again. She was supposed to be the one, and here I am, and it's over. And I went to bed crying that night. And I remember one of our dogs coming over to lick the tears off my face because you're like, this guy needs help. And it was over. I genuinely thought, this is it. My heart can't take this again. I'm not going to put myself out there. If I could talk to my younger self and say, hey, we made it. We found her. It's going to be okay, but I can't, right? You've seen all the videos, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you say? You can't. And that's the thing about life. Every season does its thing, does its work. It's there. And there were very important things that I was learning in that season that I can't skip over. That as painful as that is, I can't rush that process. There's something that I needed to learn in that season that if I refused to learn in that season, I'd have to learn later on. And as a parent, I can imagine, my parents, they've probably experienced their own heartbreak. Maybe they were laughing a little bit, like, ay, mi hijo, ni sabe. It's going to be okay. But maybe if you've held your child in your arms and they're sick, you wish you could exchange places with them. You don't want them to endure that suffering. And I can imagine God with his disciples. Yeah, it's dark. But there's something I'm doing here in this moment, in this season, and I can't rush it. Something is coming alive. You can't see it yet. You can't see the work I'm doing, but just wait, just wait. And so there's a reason. I don't know what it is for you, but there are reasons for every season in life. So I don't think God pushes us into those situations, but God takes what life throws at us and he works it, crafts it like a master craftsman. He works it in our favor. He's doing an important work in our lives. And as much as we want to rush and just get there, we'll get there on time. Silent Sabbath reminds us of this deep, deep, deep experience. You cannot, friends, you cannot experience resurrection without the pain of death. Resurrection, it's not even a thing if something wasn't dead first. There is no way for anyone to say, oh, he came back to life if he wasn't dead. And so some of us want the resurrection power. We want the glory that comes with it. We want that experience. We want relationships restored, a great marriage, great friendships, a good life. We want the fullness of life that God has to offer us. That's great. The bad news or the real news is that the only way to get there is through this experience of death. And so if you want a great friendship, you want great friendships. Great friendships aren't the kinds of friends that always tell you, they're always just cheering you on. They cheer you on and it's important. But a good friend knows when it's wise and when it's time to give you a reality check. When it's time to speak some truth to you. Because maybe we surround ourselves with people who hype us up, oh, everything's great, you're perfect, you're beautiful, it's him. He's the problem in the relationship. You are flawless, girl. There could be nothing wrong with you. But maybe we need a friend that can be honest with us and say, hey, you know that I love you. You know
But here's a nugget of truth that I think you need to hear in this season. Oh, and it's going to hurt your ego. It's going to hurt. I don't like that. I don't want to hear that. But it might be necessary. You want a great marriage, you're going to have to sacrifice getting your way all the time. You are going to have to be humble enough to apologize. You are going to have to do the difficult work of communicating rather than giving the cold shoulder or avoiding or ignoring. You see, you can't experience resurrection without having gone through some kind of death. And the thing that might die is your pride, your self-sufficiency, this false sense of how great you are. Oh man, I've had to learn that in my own relationship so many times. But that's the way to the other side. You want this great life that God has to offer? Well, even he said, take up your cross. You want resurrection? You want that? That looks great, doesn't it? The resurrection power with Jesus coming back from the tomb, the earth shaking and trembling, and the hope and the expansion and the growth. We all want that. We all want the successful job, the successful marriage, the successful friendships, the house, the car. We want, yeah. And I don't think God withholds any of these good things from us, but they come with some suffering. You want to run a marathon, you got to push through, right, David? I'm not telling you to push through, bro. It's okay. You want to achieve some great, there's going to be sacrifice in it. And so Jesus, Silent Sabbath, reminds us that, yeah, there will be resurrection, but this right here is also necessary and it's important. And you can't get that without going through this. Silent Sabbath also reminds us that life's greatest lessons come from failure, not success. I wish it didn't have to be this way. I wish I was good enough to learn from when things go well for me. But the truth is, when things go well for us, we hardly ever sit down to examine, hey, what went really well here? What did I do really good? But when your family falls apart, your project falls apart, the thing that you were working toward falls apart, that's when you sit down and you're like, what am I doing with my life? What's going on? What's happening in this situation? Like, what am I missing here? Why did this happen? And Silent Sabbath is that reminder that life's most important lessons for us come through what seems like a failure, like an ending. What seems like death. And so as much as we try to resist, we always want to take the dub. We always want to be winners. We always want to be striving. We want to ride, soar through the heavens, we want to be the wings, the eagle flying. We want all of that. But sometimes I think God allows failure. And I put it in quotation marks because, as many of you know, a failure that you learn from is a lesson learned. You're not a failure, and you're not defined by that dark moment, that one situation, that season, that thing that happened to you. But there are things that you can learn from that will help you on your journey as you take the next steps. And so here we are on Silent Sabbath. And I want to invite the worship team to come up. And if maybe you felt like, Pastor, you got to talk about resurrection. You can't leave us hanging here. You can't leave us in this moment of despair. You can't leave us in the darkness. You can't leave us sitting here. I'm here to tell you that the good news is that we are on the other side of that story. We know what happens, and it's always great to have already seen the movie, to know what happens, to rush to the end, and that's all good, and it's helpful, and it's a reason why I think we're here today. Because there might also be somebody that's sitting here and in that dark situation right now. There might be somebody that's facing a difficult season, a difficult moment in their lives, whatever it might be. Silent Sabbath. As the sun began to set there again on the disciples, behind the scenes, God was about to do his greatest work when nobody could see, in the quiet of the night. I don't know exactly at what moment, but Jesus was about to come bursting forth from that tomb. And it's a reminder for us that hope is on the way. Hope is on the way, friend. Your situation, the chapter of the story that you're in, that's not the end. You're here today, it means that there is still hope. That there is a reason why you woke up this morning. It's not God's joy to just, here we go, another day, so you can see how miserable life is. No. There's a work that's being done. And the same God who is leading you, as the psalmist said so well. Yeah, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Because I wish it was unavoidable. I wish it was avoidable. I wish we didn't have to. But he said those words, so wise, so full. Even if I have to, I don't need to fear, because I know you're with me. I hope you know that in that dark season, in that moment, in that situation, God is there with you too. His silence doesn't mean that he's abandoned you. There's a work that he's doing within you. You can't perceive it, you can't see it, but it's about to burst forth. So hang on. Hope is on the way. This afternoon now, as we close and as the worship team leads us, I want to make an invitation to you. If there's anyone here that wants to say, Jesus, I want to put my trust in you. I want to, he's the first one, see? He's the first one. He said, I'm here, amen, amen. Jesus, I want to put my trust in you. I want to listen well, hear what you are doing. Give me ears to hear, eyes to see what you're doing in my life in this situation. I don't understand, it doesn't make sense, it's confusing, but here I am. Do your best in me. I want to invite you to just to stand. As we finalize, as we wrap up the service, if that is the prayer of your heart, if you need a little dose of hope this morning, that things will change, that things will get better, that this isn't the end of your story, that God is writing a new chapter, then just stand with me as we say this prayer. Father God, this afternoon we've gathered here to remember what you've done this last week. And today on Silent Saturday, we look at the tomb. We look at that place where you've been buried. And all hope seems lost and despair is unavoidable and there's confusion all around. And maybe we find ourselves, we confess, maybe that we feel like you've forsaken us, that we feel like you've abandoned us at times. And as we pray this prayer of confession, as we confess how we feel, we ask that your Spirit might begin to heal the parts of us that need to learn to trust on you, on your timing, on your way of doing us. Speak to us today. May we have ears to hear and eyes to see the things that you are doing in this moment, in this season, is our prayer in Jesus' name.